If you told me years ago that I'd be here running a music school, teaching hundreds of students online, and hitting 100,000 subscribers, I would not have believed you. Because honestly, my journey into piano was not smooth. I had no idea what I was doing half the time. I burned out more times than I can count, and I almost had to quit completely. But somehow I figured it out, and today I'm telling you exactly how it all happened, from my first piano lesson to starting my own music school to launching a YouTube channel. If you've ever felt like learning piano is frustrating, if you've ever struggled with traditional methods, or if you're just curious how this all came to be, stick around, because I promise this story is not what you expect. This is how it all happened. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. I was born in a small town in Georgia, one of those places where everybody knows everybody and nothing really happens. And if you knew me back then, you probably never guessed that I'd end up here, because I was painfully shy. But there was one thing I wasn't quiet about, and that was piano. I wanted to learn so badly, probably because my grandmother is a pianist and also taught piano. It was just something I needed to do. I begged my parents to let me take lessons, but for some reason they had this rule that I couldn't start until 3rd grade when I was supposed to learn cursive writing. So finally, 3rd grade rolls around and I start lessons. And my first teacher was exactly what you'd picture, a lady with a little designated piano room in her house. And I was just okay at it. Eventually, she stopped teaching and I switched to a new teacher who taught out of a church. This teacher was pretty cool, and up until this point, I had always played from method books and I was so bored with it. I was in middle school and I was hitting a slump with the whole thing. Then one day I saw Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles on MTV. This was back in 2002 and I was 12 years old. And I remember thinking, I have to learn this. So what did I do? I secretly taught myself 1,000 Miles because obviously that was the song back then. And I never told my teacher. And if you have no idea what song I'm talking about, it's this song. I'll never forget how to play it. When my teacher came back to the room, he said he heard me in the distance and he was like, wait, you can do that? You're playing octaves? And that's when something clicked. From that point on, he let me play some music I actually enjoyed. But just my luck, he stopped teaching piano too. And that led to a cycle I didn't realize would happen over and over again. Switching teachers, hitting walls, almost losing interest, and then rediscovering it all over again. There were times when my mom even asked if I wanted to quit, and I thought about it, but I remembered how I had quit dance before and I regretted that. So I said no. And I actually vividly remember this moment, like something deep down was telling me to keep going, and I'm so glad I did. So now we're getting into high school. High school is when everything really started to shift for me musically. Like I said, before this, I had been taking piano lessons, but it was mostly method books. Nothing too intense, just going through the standard lesson books, playing whatever was assigned. But when I got to high school, I switched to a new piano teacher, one who was on a whole different level. He was a concert pianist who also taught at a local college, and he was serious, like constantly flying off to Prague to perform, kind of serious. And this is when I really started getting into classical music. I went from playing simple lesson book pieces to suddenly learning real classical repertoire. And I loved it. At one point, I got it in my head that I wanted to learn Chopin's Heroic Polonaise. I decided I wanted to learn the hardest thing that I could find. If you don't know this piece, it's an absolute beast, and I had no business trying to play it at my level, but I didn't care, I was determined. I always watched this exact video of Martha Argerich playing it, one of my favorite pianists. It's such a cool piece, and I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out. So I worked for months and months. I practiced like crazy. That one piece completely changed my playing. Even though it was way above my level, it forced me to improve so much faster. By my senior year, I was competing in state piano competitions and doing really well. At this point, I was playing classical music, not just because I enjoyed it, but because I was good at it. Here's a little clip of me playing Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu as a youngin', a teenager. But at the same time, I was starting to discover a whole different side of music. Even though I was deep into classical piano, I was also playing in a band with my friends. We called ourselves Dissonance, which looking back is so embarrassing, and I think it was my idea. But it's a music theory term, so we thought we were being clever. This was also the first time I started teaching myself guitar, and through guitar, I started learning about chords, which, by the way, none of my piano teachers had ever taught me about. All of my piano training up to this point was classical or the method books. I was reading sheet music and focusing on technique, but no one ever taught me how to just sit down and play chords. So I started figuring out myself on piano as well. And that's when something clicked. I could actually play songs I liked, and quickly. I could mess around on the piano in a way I had never done in lessons. And even though I was painfully shy, I started playing in a lot of talent shows. I was also in marching band playing trumpet and clarinet. At this point, I was just learning new instruments for fun. With all of this going on, classical piano, talent shows, playing in a band, marching band, when my piano teacher asked me if I wanted to major in music for college, I knew my answer. And just like that, my entire senior year became about preparing for college auditions. So I auditioned for college, got accepted, and even earned a piano scholarship. And college was a lot. It was intense, very classical focused. My entire schedule revolved around music, hours of practice, theory classes, music history, ear training, ensembles, and performances. And for a while, I loved it. I learned everything about music theory and took my playing to an even higher level. But there was a huge problem I didn't see coming. About halfway through my degree, I developed tendonitis. And if you've never had it, let me just say it is not fun. Imagine trying to play an intricate classical piece, but your hands feel like they're on fire. My physical therapist told me straight up, you need to change your major. But if you know me by now, you know I'm very determined. I wasn't about to give up after everything I had worked for. So I pushed through. It was hard. I had to change the way I practiced. I had to take constant breaks, and I had to be super careful about overworking my hands. And then came the final requirement of my performance degree, the senior recital. This was supposed to be a huge moment. Most people invite their friends and family, make a big event out of it. I didn't invite anyone. I just wanted to get through it. I was exhausted, burnt out, and honestly, by the time I finished my degree, I was questioning everything. Because here's the thing, I had spent years learning to play some of the hardest piano music in the world, but once college was over, I realized something. I had bills to pay. So I took a job as a public school elementary music teacher. And let me tell you, that job was exhausting. I worked at multiple schools at once, constantly driving between different schools, teaching huge classes of little kids, managing lesson plans, and dealing with all the chaos that comes with being a public school teacher. 2 years into teaching elementary music, I finally admitted to myself that I hated it. I never actually wanted to be a public school teacher in the first place. It wasn't the dream. The dream was always to run my own music school. From that moment on, I decided to figure out how to do it. But again, I had bills to pay. So I decided to start teaching private piano lessons after work and figure it out from there. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have space. But I knew I had to start somewhere. Since I had no money to rent a studio, I figured the best option was to find a church that would let me rent a room by the hour. So I emailed every church I could find, asking if they had space I could use to teach piano lessons. Most of them never responded. Some of them said no, but after months of trying, I finally found the one that said yes. They let me rent a small choir room by the hour, so I started teaching private piano lessons after work. But there was another problem. I had no idea how to get students. So I did the only thing I could think of. I seriously walked around neighborhoods handing out flyers in the hot Georgia heat. I put them on doors, I put them on mailboxes, which by the way, I think is illegal. I literally had no idea what I was doing. But somehow it eventually worked. Over time, I was getting to work at 7 a.m. for my public school job, teaching at multiple schools, and finishing at 3 p.m. Then I would drive straight to the church and teach private lessons until 7:30 or 8 p.m. And I also taught on Saturdays. I barely had any time to myself, and it was so exhausting. But by the end of my 3rd year of public school teaching, I had 25 private students and even had a wait list for the summer. And then one day at school, my students were being particularly bad. And so that day I sent in my resignation letter. I hadn't planned to quit that day, but I hit a breaking point and I knew I was done. That summer after my job ended, I went all in. I taught 50 private students by myself, working Monday through Saturday, and 6 months later, I hired my first teacher. And just like that, my music school was officially a music school. But things weren't always smooth. After I had already been growing my music school in the church for a little while, another music school moved into the same church. And suddenly I had competition in the same building. That was hard. I had worked so hard to grow my student base, and now another school was right there doing the same thing. It was stressful and weird. But I knew if I wanted to keep growing, I had to focus on what made my school different. So I kept pushing forward. And one of the biggest things that made my studio different was something I hadn't expected. I realized that my studio was attracting a ton of adult students. I don't know if it was because we were in the city or what, but I had always pictured a music school being mostly kids. Over time, more and more adult students kept signing up. At first, I did exactly what I was taught to do in music school. I taught my adult students with adult piano method books. And quickly I realized these books were not working well at all. Most of them were just slightly modified kids' books. The music was childish, the pacing was slow, and my adult students, who were smart, successful people, were stuck playing Mary Had a Little Lamb like they were in kindergarten. They didn't enjoy it, and trust me, I didn't enjoy it either. But that's how I was taught to teach piano in music school, so that's what I did at first. Eventually, I started branching out of those lesson books and teaching things in a way that made more sense. I even used to joke with my adult students that one day I would make my own method book because these books were so bad. And then guess what? 2020 happened. And like everyone else, I had no idea what was gonna happen next. I had to close my school, and then we went fully online. And trust me, that was very hard. It was scary because I didn't know how long it would last. And on top of that, our business is pretty seasonal. Summer is always a slow time for music schools, and suddenly I was facing summer and COVID at the same time. I thought my business was done for. But I had a moment where I thought, you know what? I can either sit here and panic, or I can figure this out. So I stopped teaching at my school so I could focus on saving it. And while I was trying to keep everything afloat, I made a decision. I was gonna finally make that piano method for adults. I had been thinking about it for years, but now I decided to actually do it. First, I started interviewing adult students, over 50 of them. I wanted to really understand what frustrated them, what held them back, and what they actually wanted out of learning piano as an adult. Then I put together a new way of teaching based on those interviews, my own experience, and what I had already started testing with my students. And in January 2021, I launched my first live version of the Piano Accelerator through my music school, which by the way is still Pianoly's online program today. I was so excited that I even wrote down all my Piano Accelerator students on a dry erase board every time they joined. At this point, I still didn't have a YouTube channel. I wasn't doing social media. I just focused on making sure this method actually worked. I taught it live online, got tons of feedback, and kept tweaking and improving it. And here's what made it different. Instead of forcing adults to start with nursery rhyme style songs, I had them learning real music that they actually enjoyed. Instead of jumping straight into reading music the traditional way, I taught them how to play songs with chords first, just like how I learned when I started playing in a band. Instead of a slow, frustrating process, I gave my students a step-by-step way to play music they love right away. And after over a full year of testing and refining, I put it all together into a full online course. And at that point, I had the method, I had the course. But then I had a new problem. By the way, if you want to see the exact roadmap we follow inside the Piano Accelerator, I've put together a free training that walks you through how to go from zero to playing real songs you love without wasting years on kids songs or boring drills. This is the same step-by-step process we use in the Piano Accelerator, and it's helped hundreds of adult students learn piano faster and with more freedom. If you're serious about learning piano the right way, check out the link below. At this point, I had the Piano Accelerator fully built out. It was tested, refined, and my students were getting amazing results, but I kept thinking, how can I help even more people? I knew that so many adults wanted to learn piano but felt stuck, either because of bad experiences with traditional lessons or because they thought they were too old to start. And that's when I realized YouTube. YouTube was where I had learned so many things over the years. Back when I was teaching myself how to play pop music, I used to watch videos of Elton John, Billy Joel, and other amazing pianists just to study how they played. I would slow them down, wash their hands, and try to figure out what they were doing. So I knew firsthand that YouTube was a powerful way to learn piano. But I also knew that most of the beginner-friendly content out there was still teaching piano in a really outdated way. So in January 2023, I posted my first ever YouTube video. And let me tell you, I had no idea what I was doing, but I stuck with it. At first, nothing crazy happened, a few views here and there, a handful of subscribers, but over time, the channel started growing. Every week, more and more people were watching, learning, and leaving comments like, I tried learning piano before, and this is the first time it actually makes sense. And you know, mixed in with some incredibly mean ones. I had started YouTube just hoping to help a few more people, and now I had students from all over the world learning from my videos. And at the same time, my music school was still going strong. We had survived the pandemic, we had survived the competition moving into our building, and after years of renting from a church, we were finally able to afford our own beautiful new building. We acquired the building and then we started renovating it in early 2024. So finally the day came when I said bye to the old location in April 2024 after 8 long years. And we had a big grand opening party at our new location with some of our teachers who formed a band. And here we are. Today, my in-person music school has hundreds of students, and my Piano-Ly Piano Accelerator program has hundreds as well. And recently we hit the 100,000 subscriber milestone in December 2024, which YouTube gave me a very pretty silver play button. Thank you, YouTube. Thinking back to when I was handing out flyers door to door, just hoping someone would sign up, it's crazy to see how far we've come. And right now, I'm filming this video from inside our brand new music school. Between Piano-Ly and my in-person music school, I get to help thousands of students every single day. So if you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you. Whether you're subscribed to the channel, learning inside the Piano Accelerator, or just here listening to my story, I appreciate you. And if you're someone who's always wanted to play piano but never thought you could, I'm here to tell you, you absolutely can. And I'd love to help you get there. It's absolutely not too late to learn the piano. Check out my student John, who started learning piano later in life in my Piano Accelerator program.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
If you want to learn the exact roadmap we use inside the Piano Accelerator so that you can finally start playing your favorite songs, check out my free training in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.